From the White House in the office of the President of the United States, we present an address by Dwight D. Eisenhower. This is the farewell address for President Eisenhower, whose 8 years as chief executive come to an end at noon Friday. Mr. Eisenhower has chosen this time for his final speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. First, I should like to express my gratitude to the radio and television networks for the opportunities they have given me over the years to bring reports and messages to our nation. My special thanks go to them for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. 3 days from now, after half a century in the service of our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office as, in traditional and solemn ceremony, the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. Like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who will labor with him Godspeed. I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on issues of great moment, the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of the nation. My own relations with the Congress, which began on a remote and tenuous basis when, long ago, a member of the Senate appointed me to West Point, have since ranged to the intimate during the war and immediate post-war period, and finally to the mutually interdependent during these past 8 years. In this final relationship, the Congress and the administration have, on most vital issues, cooperated well to serve the nation good rather than mere partisanship, and so have assured that the business of the nation should go forward. So my official relationship with the Congress ends in a feeling, on my part, of gratitude that we have been able to do so much together. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. 3 of these involved our own country. Despite these holocausts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and most productive nation in the world. Understandably proud of this preeminence, we yet realize that America's leadership and prestige depend not merely upon our unmatched material progress, riches, and military strength, but on how we use our power in the interest of world peace and human betterment. Throughout America's adventure in free government, our basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. To strive for less would be unworthy of a free and religious people. Any failure traceable to arrogance or our lack of comprehension or readiness to sacrifice would inflict upon us grievous hurt, both at home and abroad. Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration. To meet it successfully, there is call for not so much the emotional and transitory sacrifices of crisis, but rather those which enable us to carry forward steadily, surely, and without complaint, the burdens of a prolonged and complex struggle with liberty, the stake. Only thus shall we remain, despite every provocation, on our charted course toward permanent peace and human betterment. Crises there will continue to be. In meeting them, whether foreign or domestic, great or small, there is a recurring temptation to feel that some spectacular and costly action could become the miraculous solution to all current difficulties. A huge increase in newer elements of our defenses, development of unrealistic programs to cure every ill in agriculture, a dramatic expansion in basic and applied research. These and many other possibilities, each possibly promising in itself, may be suggested as the only way to the road we wish to travel. But each proposal must be weighed in the light of a broader consideration, the need to maintain balance in and among national programs. Balance between the private and the public economy. Balance between the cost and hoped-for advantages. Balance between the clearly necessary and the comfortably desirable. Balance between our essential requirements as a nation and the duties imposed by the nation upon the individual. Balance between actions of the moment and the national welfare of the future. Good judgment seeks balance in progress. Lack of it eventually finds imbalance and frustration. The record of many decades stands as proof that our people and their government have, in the main, understood these truths and have responded to them well in the face of threat and stress. But threats, new in kind or degree, constantly arise. Of these I mention two only. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor tinkering in his shop has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. It is the task of statesmanship to mold, to balance, and to integrate these and other forces, new and old, within the principles of our democratic system, ever aiming toward the supreme goals of our free society. Another factor in maintaining balance involves the element of time. As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow. During the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. Such a confederation must be one of equals. The weakest must come to the conference table with the same confidence as do we, protected as we are by our moral, economic, and military strength. That table, though scarred by many past frustrations, cannot be abandoned for the certainty agony of disarmament, of the battlefield. Disarmament with mutual honor and confidence is a continuing imperative. Together we must learn how to compose differences, not with arms, but with intellect and decent purpose. Because this need is so sharp and apparent, I confess that I lay down my official responsibilities in this field with a definite sense of disappointment. As one who has witnessed the horror and the lingering sadness of war, as one who knows that another war could utterly destroy this civilization, which has been so slowly and painfully built over thousands of years, I wish I could say tonight that a lasting peace is in sight. Happily, I can say that war has been avoided. Steady progress toward our ultimate goal has been made, but so much remains to be done. As a private citizen, I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road. So in this, my last good night to you as your president, I thank you for the many opportunities you have given me for public service in war and in peace. I trust in that service, you find some things worthy. As for the rest of it, I know you will find ways to improve performance in the future. You and I, my fellow citizens, need to be strong in our faith that all nations under God will reach the goal of peace with justice. May we be ever unswerving in devotion to principle, confident but humble with power, diligent in pursuit of the nation's great goals. To all the peoples of the world, I once more give expression to America's prayerful and continuing aspiration. We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth, and that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. Now, on Friday noon, I am to become a private citizen. I am proud to do so. I look forward to it. Thank you, and good night.
We have presented the farewell address by the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who spoke this evening from his office in the White House.
Good evening, everybody. This is Douglas Edwards. As you just heard, President Eisenhower, in his last good night to the American people as president, cautioned against two threats to our democracy. The first threat he defined as unwarranted influence by an immense military establishment and a vast armaments industry, whether sought or unsought. And he also cautioned against letting public policy become the captive of a scientific and technological elite. He said that while we must respect scientific research and development, like the military, the influence of the scientific must be molded and balanced within the democratic system. The President combined prayerful words for his successor with a warning that the struggle with communism will be long and not subject to any miraculous solution. He said he would never cease to do what little I can to achieve peace and disarmament with mutual honor and confidence. Mr. Eisenhower spoke from a White House office already stripped of most of his personal belongings, including his oil paintings. Tomorrow, he'll hold a farewell news conference. On Thursday, he will discuss transition problems for the second time with President-elect John Kennedy. On Friday, he will attend the inauguration services, and shortly after lunch, he will leave with Mrs. Eisenhower for Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a private citizen completing 50 years of national service. On this night that the outgoing president assessed the world situation and the nation awaited the words of his successor, Moscow chose to make public a document as important as any issued by the Soviets in the post-war period. It was Premier Khrushchev's official interpretation of the manifesto issued by the Communist Summit meeting called to resolve the ideological conflict between the hard war being inevitable, that's the inevitable line of the Chinese communists, with a soft, peaceful coexistence approach of the Soviets. Said Khrushchev in briefing Russian party organizations, war is not necessary. That is, not atomic war and not brushfire wars such as the war in Korea. No mention, however, of Laos. Khrushchev did, however, go on fully to approve a third class of war, what he called the War of Liberation. He called the Algerian Rebellion a sacred war, and he added, "We have helped and shall go on helping people fighting for their freedom." The Soviet premier predicted that a victory by communism is not far off, and here he warned that war could come if the capitalist nations resist what is historically inevitable, according to him. He defined peaceful coexistence as an intense struggle by economic, political, and ideological means, and said it is one means of preventing a military conflict with capitalism. Another means he described as the development of peace fronts throughout the world, including pacifists of all political beliefs. Further evidence that the Russians will try to upstage President-elect Kennedy with a spectacular space shot this week has been provided by the Navy. A fourth Soviet range ship has been spotted moving into position in the Pacific. And like the three previously reported vessels, this one carries helicopters, which of course could be used to recover either a missile nose cone or a space capsule. For some time, there's been speculation that the Russians are trying to time a man in space effort to obscure the inauguration here. Mr. Kennedy is back in Washington tonight, attending a gala family party and otherwise making final preparations for his role in the Inauguration Day ceremonies on Friday. But looking beyond Friday, Republicans are already throwing challenges onto the floor of Congress. 2 Republican senators, both from New York State, introduced a 7-point civil rights program today. Senators Javits and Keating of New York then issued a statement urging President-elect Kennedy to back the program and otherwise take the initiative in civil rights cases. One of their colleagues, Senator Cooper of Kentucky, also introduced a civil rights bill. It would permit the Attorney General to intervene in school desegregation cases brought to courts by individuals. The retiring Republican Attorney General, William Rogers, held a farewell news conference in Washington today, and he predicted that civil rights was probably one of the most active of all problems facing his successor, Robert Kennedy. The key question for Rogers today, however, was his view of events at the University of Georgia.
Mr. Rogers, are you satisfied with the progress at the University of Georgia?
Well, of course, I'm gratified and pleased that the events of the last couple of days have worked out so well. I think all Americans were very disappointed and sad at the events that preceded that. I would hope that the events of the last few days would indicate that the persons concerned will comply with a decision of the court, because it certainly is in the national interest that that happen.
Mr. Attorney General, would you favor the Civil Rights Commission proposal to cut off federal funds to state-operated colleges and universities if they don't agree to desegregation?
Yes, generally speaking, I think that the government of the United States should not directly contribute to education for an institution that does not comply with the decision of the Supreme Court. So generally speaking, I would favor that.
On the University of Georgia campus at Athens, the 2 Negro students whose presence resulted in those riots last week attended classes without incident today. At the same time, 6 Ku Klux Klansmen arrested during the melee were bound over for grand jury action on charges of carrying weapons to a public gathering. Well, back in Congress on the House side, Speaker Sam Rayburn has received solid backing from self-described liberal Democrats for his plan to enlarge membership of the Rules Committee. Rayburn plans to expand the committee, a roadblock for much liberal legislation, from 12 to 15 members. Of the 3 new members, 2 would be liberal Democrats, the 3rd a Republican, thereby breaking up the Republican Southern Democrat coalition which has run the committee in the past. The Rayburn plan goes to a House Democratic caucus tomorrow. Well, coincident with Kennedy's return to Washington was the release of a Senate Commerce Committee report which urges a new look at trade restrictions on Red China. The new look, however, should be within the context of prevailing foreign policy considerations towards the Beiping regime. The Beiping regime and the United States' attitude towards it was the subject of a Senate speech by Senator Norris Cotton, Republican of New Hampshire. Cotton challenges Chester Bowles' avowal of a two-China policy and says that if he feels that way, then Bowles should not be confirmed American Undersecretary of State. The statement may very well be the first shot of a prolonged congressional battle over approval of Bowles' nomination. Well, there's no controversy in Great Britain, however, about any of Mr. Kennedy's cabinet and other top-level appointments so far. CBS News correspondent Dan Shore discovered the general air of approval in an interview with Labor Party leader Hugh Gaitskell, who is now in New York City.
I think myself, and I believe this is the general feeling in Britain, that he's picked a very strong team. I happen to know personally a number of them, and all of them men of very, very great ability, energetic, reasonably young, and well-informed. And I think that the reaction in Britain to his government, to his administration, has been favorable.
Prime Minister Macmillan has said that this is a team with which he can work very well. I take it from what you've said that between you and Macmillan there's no difference on cooperating with Kennedy and his cabinet.
Oh, absolutely none, no. I mean, if we were in power today, we should certainly be very pleased with the team, and there's no doubt at all that we would cooperate very well with them.
Thank you, Mr. Gaitskell.
The Senate Armed Services Committee took a second and closer look today at a trust fund set up by Robert McNamara, who was designated Kennedy Defense Secretary. After the session, McNamara told reporters he would change his trust fund agreement anyway, the Senate suggested, to avoid possible conflict of interest. One of President Eisenhower's final official acts as chief executive was the signing of a treaty today with Canada. It calls for the development of the Columbia River Basin in the northwest, and is the basis for the eventual spending of billions of dollars over the next half century or so. In Sheldon, Iowa, a town of some 4,300 persons, the question tonight is, where did $2 million or more go? It's missing from the Sheldon National Bank, and federal authorities say the bank president's daughter, a quiet, well-liked Mrs. Bernice Geiger, has admitted embezzling it over a long period of time. Vice President Richard Nixon added a touch of humor today to his farewell appearance as presiding officer of the Senate. He announced that he's presenting to the chamber 2 3-minute sand glasses that will enable his successor, Lyndon Johnson, to keep accurate time on the speakers. The Senate has a 3-minute rule for speakers during what is called the morning hour. In deadpan fashion, Nixon told his colleagues a major problem of the presiding officer is to enforce the 3-minute rule. Taking note that Senator Mike Mansfield, the new majority leader, has announced he wants it stringently enforced, Nixon recalled that Senator Francis Case had suggested an hourglass similar to those used by the ancient Greeks, but he concluded that wouldn't be practical to measure short stints. Nixon said he explored the situation and purchased not 1, but 2 3-minute glasses. Well, now here are some of the things the president said tonight. Like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who labor with him Godspeed. I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. Despite these holocausts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and most productive nation in the world. Crises there will continue to be. In meeting them, whether foreign or domestic, great or small, there is a recurring temptation to feel that some spectacular and costly action could become the miraculous solution to all current difficulties. But each proposal must be weighed in the light of a broader consideration. A closing note or two on the critical housing situation in Washington as Inauguration Day draws near. Hotel space was reserved long ago. The inaugural Housing Committee alone has placed more than 15,000 persons in hotels, motels, apartments, and private homes. It has at least 500 unsatisfied requests and is operating on a referral basis. Reported vacancies are being listed for applicants to check out for themselves. There were some motel rooms reported available, but officials cautioned that latecomers had better be prepared to go the 40 miles or so to Baltimore or to Annapolis for their accommodations. For weeks now, Washingtonians have been getting calls from friends asking, is your guest room filled? Congressmen have been getting calls for help, too, from constituents back home. Some old-timers said they'd never encountered anything like the demand for tickets and housing. Already the railroad terminals are getting crowded, and the so-called Pullman cities are mushrooming in 2 railroad yards. Approximately 5,000 persons will be staying in their sleeping cars, including 1,800 cadets from West Point and 500 men of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. More than 7,000 military personnel will have to be housed, but military officials say they can handle it. Summer ROTC areas at various stations in and around Washington have been opened to provide room. The 1,800-man wing from the Air Force Academy will stay at Fort Meade and the Merchant Marine Academy, and band will be at the Anacostia Naval Station. The midshipmen from the U.S. Naval Academy are coming by bus from Annapolis, 40 miles away. The big family of President-elect John F. Kennedy settled its problems by leasing houses in the Georgetown section of Washington. Mr. and Mrs. John F. Kennedy themselves and Carolyn and young John have no problem. When they leave their Georgetown home Friday morning, the White House will be waiting for them in the afternoon. Earlier in this program, you heard from Washington what President Eisenhower himself described as his last good night to the American people as president. On Friday, our oldest president will be succeeded by our youngest when John Kennedy takes the oath of office and delivers his first speech to the American people as president. Douglas Edwards reporting from New York.
This is the CBS Television Network.